Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Public Works and Finance meeting of 2024. We have a new committee member with us, Bryce Blankenship, and Sandra is sitting in for Gina Terusio while she's out of town. So I did have a question, Bill, before we start. Do you need any of the logistics for chair, vice chair, as it's not on the agenda, or do we just need to let you know after the fact what our preference is?
It's on the
Oh, and the amended.
Yep.
That's really embarrassing. It is the first item. Well, great. Segueing. Call, guys. Okay.
You're good.
Selection of committee chair and vice chair. Thank you. That's embarrassing. Great. I'm happy to serve as committee chair for an additional year. And I don't know if anyone else is interested. Sandra or Gina.
No.
Great. And Bryce, would you like to see how this first couple of meetings go? And
I would like that.
excellent. And so if we're comfortable and we can talk to Gina after, would we entertain Gina Terusio being appointed as vice chair for this committee? Hey, excellent. So motion and a second for Haley to serve as committee chair, Gina to serve as vice chair, Public Works and Finance. Do you need us? Do we vote?
You don't need to.
Great.
That's
Love it. That's what we'll do then. Item 2. Gosh, it was right there in italics. Sorry, guys. Item 2, approval of the Public Works Finance Committee meeting minutes from December 11th. They looked great. Thank you, Taylor, as always. Any concerns, or are we comfortable approving as presented?
Totally comfortable.
Groovy. Love it. Item 3, and I have some questions for Sarah on this one, so this one will probably take a little bit longer. Hopefully no curveballs. Item 3 is disbursement report for December 2023 with Sarah Decker. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. All right. So looking at the accounts payable report for month ending December 31st, 2023, expenditures totaled $3,914,499.19. Our largest expenditure was payroll, $2,332,624. I want to note that in this payroll was the one-time 5% employee stipends. So that is why it looks a little larger than usual.
Excellent.
And I have 3 major expenditures to point out. The first one, a payment towards the Palouse Mall AC water main project, $194,626.37. A payment towards the Booster Station Phase 2 project, $229,949.88. And the last one is IS ordered all of our Dell computers for fiscal year 24, and that was $81,120.54.
What's all? Like,
Yeah.
everyone gets a new one?
No, they're on a replacement program.
Excellent.
Yeah, so they have a 4-year service life, typically is how we're scheduling. So on average, we're doing about a quarter of the computers every year. This year was a little bit heavier. I think we're kind of hitting back from a COVID cycle. So it's a little bit larger order this year than typical. They're not equally, as much as we like them to be equally
Sure.
25% each year. They do tend to fluctuate a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
I have some questions, and they may actually be Bill questions. I noticed on the major expenditures report that there was some acquisition for Public Ave, and I am trying to remember what is Public just for the extension for the new
So we have
subdivision?
the LSIP, I believe that's an LSIP project on Public, which is from Polk almost to Lincoln, where it's safety improvements to, I think, enclose an open ditch line, do curbing, walk, some roadway improvements, some intersection improvements at Polk and Public there.
Excellent. It was fun to see the lightning truck on the list, an all-electric car for the crew, which is exciting. I noticed we've got our usual janitorial payments for cleaning services. That had been something that we had some trouble with. Are we feeling okay as far as services received for?
As far as I've heard,
Great.
I think we are on a better cycle now, and services seem to have stabilized. So I think we're generally satisfied with the services we're currently receiving.
I love it. And I was glad to see 2 improvements for the SCADA stuff at the wastewater facility. It was long overdue. You'll get to see the tour. It looked like it was basically, I don't know, the equivalent of Pong. It looked like we were long overdue. So it's exciting to see those improvements coming through. And then my other question, I see the 2 per diems for 2 of our officers. Were they, I can't remember, is POST, it's abbreviated as capital POST. Is that just some annual training, or I can't
POST is the academy down in Boise.
Okay.
So it's for new officers. They have to go through the academy, get certified as a law enforcement officer in the state of Idaho. So there, how many, is it 10, 12 weeks?
It's a chunk.
16 weeks.
Wow.
Sorry.
Okay.
So
yeah.
that's the state academy for law
Excellent.
enforcement officers.
Excellent. I just want to make sure I knew what the acronym was. And then I see we have hopefully our last payment to JUB for the 6th Street Bridge. Are we all, after this, are there any remaining things for the 6th Street Bridge, or is everything
There are.
hunky-dory?
No,
Okay.
there are some remaining payments. We've been working with the contractor on closeout and discussions about what should be any eligible expenses. They've been making claims for additional compensation, which we have been negotiating back and forth with. So there'll be probably a final payment coming up here in the next 60 days, and that should close out the project.
But the work itself is done.
The work's complete.
Yeah,
the
it
work's
looks great,
complete.
but, yeah.
JEB has been assisting through the documentation and review of, the contractor's claim. They should have additional contract days due to the delays of other elements of the project, franchise utility work. And so JEB is assisting in reviewing those claims and coming to a resolution, which I think we'll reach with the contractor here shortly.
Love it. And then I have 2 questions left. So that I saw HVAC and boiler upgrades. I
City
can't tell
Hall.
which building. It is the
CH is I think the abbreviation for City Hall. Correct.
CH-HVAC. Yes, beautiful City Hall. And then my last question, I noticed we've got the Aquatic Center fence relocation in there. I haven't been on that side of town in a while. Is it a relocation or replacement or?
Relocation. So that was a project in the CIP to move the eastern fence line. There was some excess grass between the pool and the Herc.
Yes.
So
that's
that
neat.
grass area is going to be added to the pool side
Love it.
to open more additional space for patrons of the pool.
And good shade with the afternoon. Okay.
And it wasn't
excellent.
really utilized by Herc patrons in that location.
Good to know.
The walkway will still be available to walk through there, but some of the grass will be on the pool side.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, those were all my questions for the financial disbursement report. How do we feel? Are we comfortable approving and authorizing the use of digital signatures to sign the reports for the month of December 23?
Yes.
Excellent. We will do so. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate
thank
it. And
you.
then next up, we've got first quarter financial report, October 1st, 2023 to December 31st for fiscal year 2024.
That is correct. So if you look at the budget to actual reports, usually this time of year, we are somewhere around 25% of revenues and expenses. You will see some that are 100%. For instance, if you look at rec and culture, the transfers, that is always the one-time transfers that we do in October to Fleet and IS. You also notice that it does make transfers in a few other places. Sometimes you see them at 40.45% stormwater. It's the same situation. It just depends on the budget. So a lot of times you can see that our transfers are higher. There's a few things that I kind of want to point out as we go through here. In the water fund, you'll notice that the debt service is already at 50%, and that's just because in October we made our first loan and principal payment on the DEQ loan. And so we're already at 50% there. The debt service in fleet is at 150.95%, and that's because we made up the final payment for the fire engine, and that will be coming through with open budget.
Okay.
Is there, that was capital outlay on fleet?
Did I say debt service? Yeah, capital outlay. Sorry about that. And then in both information systems and in fleet, you will see that there is a much larger than expected. Actually, in fleet, it's showing 0 because there was a budget. But the transfer itself is much higher. That's because of our change in our allocation model. That will be coming through with open budget as well once we make the budget adoption changes. But that's why those are higher than usual. LID, I just wanted to point out with that one, that 35,611, you're going to pretty much see that at 0 all year. And that's because that's fund balance. And I believe in 25, we are planning to allocate those funds out of there, but you'll see that at 0%. And other than that, unless you have questions, total revenues are at 15.66%, expenditures at 13.99. And like I said, in open budget, when we change the budget, numbers themselves, those will change a lot.
And it doesn't feel like there are any surprises here?
No.
Okay.
My one remaining question was, I was surprised to see streets only at 4% year over year, but I'm trying to remember, is it normal for streets to, or not year over year, sorry, 4.33% of our budget to actual date, is it normal for streets to lag and then during
Yeah, so
construction season pick up?
nope. So that
Okay.
revenue actually has to do with our monies coming in from the state.
Okay.
And so just like right now in general fund, it's only at 14.38. We haven't received our large property tax payment. So second to third quarter, these revenues will catch up,
Okay.
but it's just beginning of the year.
I just assume that's what it was.
Love that. And then for the transit center, is it just normal that we issued some of those operation payments earlier in the year?
Correct. We send those out in October.
Beautiful. That's all I had for this agenda item. Bryce, any questions?
Nope.
Ruby, how do we feel about recommending approval of the FY 2024 first quarter financial report?
I feel good.
Good.
Love it. Groovy. We approve it, I guess.
right.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item number 5, we have Winterfest alcohol use request in entertainment district with, is Cody coming? How are you? Welcome, welcome.
All right. Yeah, I know Cody and I discussed and I thought I would take a shot at this. So,
Nice. Perfect time.
You're
Yeah,
gonna nail it.
you
It's gonna
have
be
me.
perfect.
So I'm here to present the alcohol use request for Moscow Chamber of Commerce for their third annual Winterfest event taking place on Saturday, February 3rd from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. They so far looks like we will have anticipated 9 licensed beer and wine vendors and 10 non-alcoholic food vendors that will be attending the event. Activities we have on the roster for the 2024 Winterfest will be Moscow axe throwing with foam throwing stars. Nyack ski erg, face painting, I think with craft, and pottery making, and marshmallow roasting around warming fire pits that we are working with the Moscow Volunteer Fire Department to monitor and make sure we are safe. Yes.
That
That's
I-
nice.
I'm sure they really appreciate that because I used to be on the homecoming committee and we have stacked the pallets exceeding their recommendations a few times. So I'm sure it's just easier for them to notice. Or
Roughly how many events are you expecting or thinking of?
3.
Scattered each one like per block almost?
I
Or
think they'll all be surrounded kind of in that center area between 5th and Main. Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, I think it was there last year too. My only question, and it may be for Sam if the applicant is able to come and join. Sam, I have a question for you, or maybe informal. I know in the the agreement, it has like 2 people for an ID check, and I know our Winterfest is the smallest of the chamber's 3 annual events. Is the 2, I don't know if the 2 people for ID checks comes from our city guidance or if that's what you're able to staff, but I wasn't sure if you had any concerns about volunteer staffing or anything like that.
No, I don't know if that comes from city guidance. I think we always just say that, but even for our smaller events, we always have at least 3
That's what I thought.
at the main check-in. And since we'll be doing 2 check-ins again, we'll have 3 there and 2 at the 5th Street spot.
Perfect.
But we already have confirmed for all of our check-in, 13 volunteers.
Love it. And do you need more volunteers, Sam? If I hear of anybody wanting to spend a Saturday with you?
Yes, we always need help
I
picking
love it.
up
Great.
and cleaning up and putting out.
I love it. Any other questions for Winterfest?
I'm still going with you buy the mug and you get the tickets scenario as you've done. Yeah.
Bug return places. Like I have a
Oh.
bazillion. I don't need yet another mug. And I'm not the only one that attends these probably too often. Do we have any kind of mug recycling anywhere?
To answer your question, no. And that's something that we're still kind of working through as we evolve in the events because so for the future, Moscow Fest will be the only event where we do the mug.
Uh-huh.
And then we did transition to the mason jars last year, so we could do a call if people wanted to donate them back.
Cool.
Because we're not going to, we used to do, well, we tried it at Moscoverfest where if you brought last year's mug, you could
Right.
utilize it, but we're not going to do that anymore because it creates way too much confusion. And
Yeah.
because we only have volunteers running those stations, they're like, oh, why do I have to still pay? What is it? So I think we are going to do something like that in the community going into year 4. Now that
Stock,
we've
right?
like worked out the glassware, because Moscoverfest will stay mugs, Moscawana will stay the jars, but we did a 10-ounce glass, just like a shaker glass
Mhm.
kind of for Winterfest, because a lot of people, when you pour that 5-ounce pour
Yeah.
in the big mugs, and then they're like, oh, if I give you 2 tickets, I want my whole mug.
Sure.
So we're trying to kind of
Okay.
limit
Yeah.
that and get rid of some of the confusion. So we don't have that yet, but we are discussing what that
Cool.
looks like going forward.
I love that. Thanks.
I
I
Yeah.
love it. Any other questions? Groovy. I'm comfortable with that as well. We recommend approval of the resolution allowing for the temporary suspension of the open container law within the event footprint of the entertainment district for Moscow Winterfest for the duration of the event. And remind us the date of the event, Sam.
February 3rd from 12 to 4.
We'll see you there. Groovy.
Would you like that on consent agenda?
I would.
Consent is fine by me. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
We're excited.
Okie dokie. Item 6, proposed lot line
That's
adjustment.
the one that got nixed.
Correct. We'll not be
Thank you.
considering item 6 today.
Thank you. So real item 6 is the selective traffic enforcement program grant application with Elisa and Eric. Hello, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Noon.
Since we have a new council member with us, I will limit my acronyms here today.
Thanks.
A little background for you. So today we have this selective traffic enforcement program. And this is a grant, and I need to update my staff report. We've received 3 prior awards. And this is basically a program that's hosted by ITD through their Office of Highway Safety. We have several grants that we work with the Office of Highway Safety with the police department. And this grant basically pays for 2,080 hours of traffic enforcement time. And the police department has a team of officers that work on that. It's not just one person. And so I'll just give you a little bit of history on what we've gotten on that grant before. Year 1 was the FY22, and it runs October through September, which is the same as our fiscal year. And when we say we start in 21, that's FY22.
Okay.
So right now we're applying for 25. Right. So our first year we asked for 100,000 or 100,900, and we received 100,000. The second year we applied for 100 and received 100. And then the third year, which is the year we're in now, we asked for 129,000 and we received 75,000. And so I spoke with Joe, who is the now the head of that program, and she said it just depends upon how much money they have in the pool and how many people apply. The guidance on this from the federal level says that this is not meant to be an ongoing program, and that
Like, don't plan on it.
the money
When the
may
money
not
runs out,
always
it
be,
runs out.
yeah, it may not always be available, but right now they know that it's funded for the next 3 years. And so we've been very fortunate to receive the awards that we have. I asked her if we should possibly anticipate receiving less this year, for this next award, and she didn't want to say yes or no. She just said, we don't know what it's going to look like, but I can tell you that they are doing a lot more marketing and a lot
Oh, so there's
more.
just more applicants then.
Yeah, I think there
Got
probably
it.
will be. They did a statewide training. So it's not something that we want to, plan our budget around
Sure.
completely, but I think that for the next 2 years, we will still receive money. So we are asking in this FY25 application for 121,000. The match funding is all in kind. And I think regarding how the program operates and works, I'll let Officer Warner fill you in on that. He's the one that manages the program.
Great.
So officers, they work their normal shift. They dedicate some of their time during that shift nearly every day to work towards traffic, check, find violations, get drugs off the street, that sort of thing. The funds that come back to us are reimbursement for those hours worked during traffic emphasis, during traffic enforcement.
So it sounds like when we are able to use this grant reimbursement to help offset the things that we would already be doing, but I mean, it is a direct reduction for what the police department costs our taxpayers when we get the grant. Is that
It's
fair?
also brought us a couple pieces of new equipment. We got 5 new radar devices
Cool.
to replace our last radar devices, which I think were purchased around 2007.
Mhm.
So there's no recurring budget for those. We're also getting a budget in this current fiscal year, not this, for PBT equipment, breath alcohol testing
Oh, cool. Okay.
for roadside checks.
Yeah. I have appreciated, I still think when the law got passed in Idaho, making texting and driving, phone use while driving illegal, I think it happened during COVID, and I continue to be really concerned about not having seen the initial PR push. So I appreciate that we continue to maintain a big focus on good drivers. Well, I guess focus on the drivers who
there you
don't
go.
know what they could do to be better drivers. So
And just to note that this program is separate from the special mobilizations that the officers do. We weren't able to do those last year because we had other things happening here in Moscow, but we did apply for this upcoming year.
Good.
And those are for like seatbelt emphasis, texting and driving, those types of things. And they can choose to either host during the time that the states set aside those, or do a mini grant for our own type of special events. So
Is there any like local initiatives for education for like texting and driving or seatbelts or anything like that kind of wrapped up in here from like the police department out in the community, or
Try
just
to do
gonna?
press releases, that sort of thing through Facebook.
Okay.
The press has been less interested in coming to do interviews with me. Since I first started, it's been very different. A lot less interest in talking to a police officer in the air.
Thanks.
but they also do talk about those things at the, the National Night Out
Right.
and the Kids Safety Fair that they do every year. And
Okay.
we are going to be doing a little more PR media this year than we have in the past. So,
Excellent. I love it.
so today we're at, a grant application is due January 31st. And so we're just here requesting approval to ask to submit that application.
Absolutely. Recommend approval? Yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah, wait, should we try again?
I was delayed.
Wait, 1, 2, 3. Absolutely. Okay, groovy. Then we recommend approval for MPD to apply for this STEP grant for $121,000 for this next cycle. Thank you both very much.
You will see coming forward too, under the same type of program, there'll be availability to apply for the mobile data terminals for the police officers' cars. And so that's again another
What
program.
is the mobile data?
It's actually a computer that's in a vehicle.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
We call them mobile data terminals. So
All
you'll
right.
see that coming forward. too.
MDT.
MDT.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Is that one also through the state or is that a federal grant?
It's through the same program through the Office of Highway Safety, a different grant application, and you'll see that next round.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can we do consent on that?
I'm comfortable with consent agenda. Excellent. That sounds
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you much, Officer Warner and Elisa. Okay,
Thank you.
item number 8, Idaho Commission on the Arts Grant Application, Public Program in the Arts with Megan Cherry. Hello, Megan. Presentation for that. I love it.
It's a preview of coming.
For
up
our next
All
one.
right.
That's right.
All right.
It's like
Be ready for
presentation first. Step. Okay.
Paperwork before the fun stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. So the Idaho Commission on the Arts grant, the public programs in the arts, this is our annual grant request to Idaho Commission on the Arts. The public programs in the arts program is intended to support operations for organizations, arts organizations in Idaho. These range from nonprofits to very small nonprofits. I've had the honor of sitting on a review panel for this grant program, and it ranges from very, very small nonprofits to municipal governments to very, larger nonprofit like Valley, Idaho, that kind of thing. So that is the intent of this grant program. This is an annual request that we make at this time every single year.
Love it. And so with you sitting on the review panel, does that just mean you abstain when the City of Moscow one comes up, or is it like divvied up?
I last spring I sat on the entry track, which is just like it sounds, it's the entry to the public programs in the arts. I abstain from, when I serve on those panels, I abstain from anything where we would have a conflict.
Absolutely.
But it's a really incredible opportunity to get a great education in grant writing and, just to learn a lot about what's happening in the arts in the state. So it's really improved the quality of our grant applications to see what other folks are doing.
And I'm sorry for the naivete here, but how successful has Moscow been in the past kind of with accessing some of these grants?
Yeah, so this program is essentially, it starts out in what's called entry track. And I believe they've changed the format of that so that an organization needs to be in that program for 1 or 2 years, and then they're shifted into public programs in the arts, or PPA. That's a more, it's not an automatic funding, but the application process is a heck of a lot easier for PPA than it is for entry track.
Once you get in that level.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. But what an organization really needs to do is stay consistent with getting the application in. And then the final reporting is where we do more writing. And that is like July, end of July type of thing. So it's not automatic, but certainly once you're on the PPA roster, as we are,
Awesome.
it becomes more like we're a familiar organization to them.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
And then I noticed the dates in the draft application that you attached for us. Is this one of the ones where if we're applying for fiscal year 2025, we're submitting for because the program dates list July 1, 2023 to June 30, 2024. Is that our fiscal year? I was thinking it was October.
It's October to September.
Yeah.
So does that straddle 2 fiscal years? Is it always retroactive?
Yeah, it always straddles fiscal years. So we apply for FY25 in January of 2024. We would receive our award letter at the end of June of 2024. We usually see the funds arrive, anywhere between July to, September, and then we defer that revenue for use in the following fiscal year. So that's a pretty
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
It does, actually.
I think Haley and I did the same hand motion.
Yeah. Synchronized. Well, and it's interesting that it's a state related, or I guess Commission on the Arts is separate, right? They are not a state. No, it's arts.idaho.gov. It's interesting that this state entity does some funky fiscal year.
So it's a state arts agency, and the funds, they're funded partially, and I don't know what percentage, but it's a pass-through organization for NEA funds. So NEA funds, to be able to come into the states for organizations or individual artists, they have to have a state
To receive
arts
it and-
agency. That's why we see in the 60s, a lot of the state arts agencies rise in that.
Well, yay, let's do it again.
Yeah. My only lingering question, because I'm really good at worst case scenario, what does it mean for you if we do not receive this grant and the arts programs? Because if it's in part retroactive versus forward thinking, does anything change, or does this just help us defer costs for all of our arts programs?
It helped.
recoup.
Yeah, it's offsetting revenue for in this year we've called out Art Walk for this. This would be this amount. It's based on our operating budget, and so we would budget for that in this upcoming FY25 budget request. And then if the funds are not received, I will be chatting with Bill and Cody about what they would like for me to do about
Makes
that.
sense.
How do you like
Let's we'll keep it positive and we do what we can, and which is
yes.
recommend approval
Agreed.
of the PPA grant application for current cycle. Any questions or concerns?
No.
All right. Okay, with consent agenda on that. And did we see that in the last one?
Yep, we did.
Okay, Ruby, thank you. And then item 9, Jackson and A mural RFQ with Megan in a presentation.
All right.
I love it.
Thank you. So this is a really exciting project that we have on the docket for this year. I wanted to give you a sense of timeline. I hope you'll forgive me. This slide has a ton of text on it, but I really wanted to give everybody a sense of the full scope of, what a project like this takes. Also, I know we've got a new council member in the room.
Can I ask what RFQ stands for?
Oh, yes. It's a request for qualifications.
Thank you.
So, and you'll also see sometimes from the arts department, you'll see an RFP or some for the other departments as well. And that's when we're asking for a specific proposal for a project. When we're asking for qualifications, essentially we're asking the artist to give us a resume, letter of interest, samples of their past work. And then when they move into a later stage of the process as a finalist, we'd ask them for a proposal specific to
Got
that
it.
project,
Got
but they would be paid for that. So
Cool. Thank you. Sorry to throw
yeah,
you off.
no, absolutely. Yeah, please ask any questions you have. So this project timeline is this was a surprise. We were not anticipating to do this project. However, the mural at the site was damaged, subsequently removed, and that happened in May. And then the Arts Commission spent some time discussing possibilities for mural replacement. At the same time, staff was talking about budget, how to, identifying funding source. And then it became clear that there was funding from the city's insurer to cover the replacement of the mural. And so the Public Art Subcommittee and the full Moscow Arts Commission developed this RFQ for your consideration today. Also, in the meantime, we developed, of course, with legal staff contracts that you see in your packet. And so forgive us for having so much information in your packets today. So here's what we're anticipating moving into 2024. Obviously, we are here at committee today, ideally going to council next week. And then our dates get less specific as we go out into the future. And that's because some more information to come in before we know exactly what's going to happen with this project. But these are the broad strokes. This is the basic shape that ideally we would be installing that mural by the end of September, both for the sake of the materials, that's going to be the best for the paint, and also just so that we would wrap that up by the end of the fiscal year. If it doesn't wrap up exactly right there at the end of the fiscal year, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world, but
Cool.
that is the goal. Yeah, that's the goal. We also in the arts department, we have a bunch of other stuff that goes on in the September zone. So we're wanting to, yeah. It's just always we have a variety of fun activities, and so we want to make sure that all dovetails into other things like Palouse Plein Air, the start of Art Walk, Mayor's Arts Awards, that kind of thing. Project budget for this includes. We did some research. So one of the things that, as I'm looking at public art projects from other organizations around the country, I pull some that I anticipate that might relate to our own. And so I've got a pretty good database of research about murals specifically. So we compared 13 different calls for mural art. Importantly, we studied those that are post-pandemic, and that's because the prices of everything have changed, and public art is no different. So this was what we found was that the average project budget was coming in at somewhere around, they were some of them were in the $40 to $50 per square foot range. We ended up on the low end of that spectrum. And part of the reason for that is our project scope is a little bit friendlier to the artist than some other projects that I saw, in that we are providing site prep, priming, and clear coat. So the artist, when the artist shows up, they have to provide their own access, as in ladder or lift or whatever they're going to use. But those preparatory steps will already be done. So they've got a blank canvas when they arrive. And there's a lot of value to that.
I have a quick question on
yeah.
that. Do they also have to pay for any permits to like block the sidewalk to do the work, or is that covered?
We will need to request to
Waiver
sidewalk, and
Okay.
I'm not sure, depends on their access, whether we would need to
Lane
do
closure.
anything with a lane closure. That's in the
Sure.
somewhat later moment, but I
They
think
don't
if there's
have
a
to pay for that.
I would have
Oh,
to
no.
defer to Bill on that one.
Depends on how you want to structure it. I mean,
Gotcha.
so in some instances, we do waive permit fees for city-related projects, others we don't. Typically depends on the funding source. So many general fund projects will waive permit fees for. If it's a utility enterprise fund project, we will charge the permit fees. Given this is largely going to be a general fund funded activity, even though it's on a water department building, we could certainly waive those. They're not substantial.
I wouldn't imagine, but.
So long as we're not getting into closing a lane on the state highway, that could get more
Sure.
costly just for traffic control.
Sure.
If that ends up necessary, I would not think so. I would think sidewalk closure and scaffolding or a lift would be adequate.
Yeah.
But that we can review that at a later
Great.
date.
Yeah. And so the budget that you see here includes that site prep and clear coat. That should say site prep primer and clear coat to be fully precise. But and then the finalist honoraria. So Councilmember Blankenship was mentioning, what is the RFP? So when we get into those finalists, that's when we are asking up to 3 folks who have submitted to the RFQ to present a site-specific design
rendering.
specifically for that project. And so the ethos we operate on is that we don't want artists to do that kind of design work specific to our projects without paying them.
Sure.
And so
Has that been historically the case as well?
Yeah, it certainly has been for the last several years. And it's definitely an industry standard. When I was looking at those projects for comparison, I was noticing that most of them are offering finalist honoraria. It's the rarity. It used to be more common to say everybody presents it, and now it's, across the industry, which I think is a really healthy thing for the arts ecosystem, that people are being paid for their design work, which is wonderful. And then the selected artist would receive $25,000, including, and that would be all of their insurance, materials, all of everything related. If there's any travel or lodging involved, that is all inclusive. Okay, and so installation. Like we were talking about, surface prep and priming would be completed by the artist would come in and install their mural. We did get fairly specific about calling out some high quality paint products for this mural. The reason for that is that we want it is set up with an expectation of expectancy, which may not sound like a lot, but that building takes a beating. It really is. It's pretty exposed. And the clear coat has a UV protectant element to it. However, we're just trying to be realistic about what is possible. If we set an expectation for a longer lifespan, we've then potentially given ourselves the problem of maintaining or worse, conserving a project that probably needed to be replaced. So setting that timeline is actually going to be, I think, good for everybody involved. And so then finally, the anti-graffiti clear coat goes on and we have a dedication party.
And remind me, did we have the clear coat previously, or is this a new step that we have since added?
Yes, there
That's part of what took so hard for us, took so long for us to unpack the damage to this one was determining if it could have been restored and that it wasn't.
Yeah, yes, it was, there was an anti-graffiti clear coat on it. The clear coat that the contractor spec'd for this, in this particular estimate, is a 2-part. I think it's a more robust product.
Okay.
Really it comes down to, what we see on that surface. So hopefully stepping up the quality of that clear coat might help a bit. If something similar were to happen, one of the tricky things about this particular site is that the substrate, you can see those exposed aggregate panels. So that makes it tricky. So hopefully we get a nice, good clear coat on there. And
Excuse me, is this a wraparound job? Okay.
yeah, so we're seeing the north side of the building now. And so up to that line where we see the exposed aggregate start, that's part of the mural area, and then it wraps around to the west side. Artist eligibility, this has been a topic for intense conversation, which is wonderful. The Arts Commission had some pretty strong feelings about this, and then we worked with legal to make sure that it aligns with our procurement policy. So that's actually an update that you will see to this RFQ between now and when it comes to council next week. The Arts Commission felt passionate about this being something that where preference was given to folks who live here in the Moscow area, and from an arts ecosystem standpoint, that does include that Eastern Washington, those Eastern Washington counties. However, our procurement policy is clear about giving preference to those who are in Idaho or who have a significant Idaho economic presence. So we've built in a pretty good scoring mechanism to create that preference.
If you get someone from like Rhode Island that just knocks your socks off, they can.
It could be done. Yes. So it's open to anyone in the United States. And so that could mean somebody flying in from Rhode Island.
Where does it get listed then? Like how does it get on that kind of national level?
Yeah, so the content management system that we use, our submission management system, is called Submittable, and it's something that I can set tags for. It's not only submission management; it's also a place where people go to find listings. So I can set tags to attract the attention of public art people, but a lot of it is local.
Sure.
It's local networks,
Sure.
and also folks who are in the region who, I know folks in Spokane who will share it. The people who run Idaho Commission on the Arts will share it, and so it seems like they spread far and wide pretty quickly. I've already had probably half a dozen emails asking
Ready for
about
it.
Yeah, everybody's ready to.
I forget the language you just used, but did you say that there's like a quantitative measuring system on how to judge people that apply?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so I've been working on a scorecard to
Scorecard,
draft
that's what you- that's
to
what you used.
bring to the Arts Commission for a look later this month, and every selection criteria that you see in that RFQ, we're attaching a numeric score to that, just to
It's helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to give as a point of reference, so that when we're talking about this preference for those who live in Latah County and Nez Perce County, that's actually attached to a number. It's not it's
Yeah.
not too much gray area.
Yeah.
Sure.
Enough gray area but not too much, right? So
I appreciate that.
yeah,
Thanks.
you bet. Okay, and then finally, this starts to shade into the creative part. The Arts Commission provided 3 keywords that were really important to them for this project, and those were play, celebration, and transformation.
I like it.
And so from that, this project description came up, and the Arts Commission recommended approval of this as well. And this is an important piece of writing because it's what guides the artist's work. So when we ask them to make sure their project aligns with or their design aligns with the project description, it's because we want it to feel the way these words come across the screen.
So I have a question about the words.
Mhm.
Like if I'm reading this, and I granted I'm a little more literal than like my artist mother, but I'm like, oh, I have to paint a dance. I feel like my mural has to have a dance. And I would assume it doesn't have to be a dance.
Create a playful dance.
Yeah, like I see creative place. I'm like, oh, I have to create something depicting a dance.
Right. Yeah. No, I think an artist could choose, there's a wide range for interpretation.
Yeah.
So I think the artist could choose to take it a number of different directions. That's what we often try with whether it's an exhibition description or public art description, it's trying to create a pretty big space with some wayfinding.
I guess
that
I would
makes
be
sense.
mindful if you're getting a lot of people giving
Yeah.
you things of dances,
Mm.
right? Because to me, that really limits it. I get the playful and create and transformation,
Sure.
but I would not submit something that didn't have a dance in it if I read this.
So I have a follow-up question to that. Is there an option for a failed RFQ? And what I mean by that is not from,
Yeah.
like heaven forbid, we don't get any applicants,
Yeah.
but let's say we either have people that we don't necessarily want. If you don't have submissions that MAC is excited to move to the next step of the RFQ, do you have a mechanism to be able to do that and extend the call or otherwise? I know we've got a tight timeline, but
Yes.
just if we got everyone that was nothing but like dancing gerbils and it was just like 20 applications for
Right.
dancing gerbils or something, is there a mechanism?
Yes, there is always the option
Okay.
to reopen the call. Also in the public art guidelines, there's the option to shift the selection mechanism to directly hiring
Yeah.
an artist. That's something that the Arts Commission and Council have done before with the sculpture at the
Yeah.
Intermodal Transit Center.
Yeah.
Transit Center Sculpture Garden.
Yeah.
And so there is a variety of options. Yeah,
And-
there are a lot of directions to go.
And I guess the other part would be assuming that MAC finds 3 finalists that they're excited to work with based on their existing body of work. There can be some back and forth, right? As far as if they're only providing dancing gerbils and we'd like to see something else, there is some room for negotiation, or is it meant to be the finalists give us their final pitch and we as the city don't ask for changes? Does that make sense?
I think the ideal as
I'm trying to
in
mitigate the
alignment
Yeah,
with I think the ideal in alignment with kind of the prevailing trends of art industry, the ideal is that we wouldn't get involved too
Yeah.
much with directing design.
I'm good with that. Yeah.
It can create challenges.
Yeah.
But if that word choice is challenging, that's something that also artists reach out to me all the
Yeah.
time and say, "Hey, this words is
Great.
can I?"
I know I read this, I would call you. I'm like, do I have to do a dance
Yeah.
or can I do?
Yeah, I think kind of exploring maybe some synonyms with dance. Like I wrote down rhythm, like a relationship, just something to kind of like signal, like, because I like the image of how they all come together and how you move kind of like sometimes chaotically, but also sometimes in conjunction when you dance with people or dance by yourself, whatever the case may be. Because that's what I'm taking that sentence to mean, right? A playful, coexistence of all those things, right? But I can see how it could be interpreted of like, oh, wait, what's going on? They
You
just
tell me dance, I'm dancing. That's all I'm saying.
I
Not well.
for what's worth, I don't have those concerns, and also I trust based if this is coming from Max wordsmithing, I also trust that since we have a strong artist representation within MAC, that if those artists are comfortable with it, I will trust that it will resonate with the artists as well. My only concern, I know, and maybe it's not a concern so much as an inquiry of the thought process behind, I noticed that the request for initial applications require the reference of existing murals. And I just had this thought, I've got 2 or 3 artists that I'm like, oh, it would be so cool to see them do a mural, but they they may not have a mural in their repertoire. And so are we weighing my guess is we got here because we don't want someone doing their first mural this time around. And so it's not meant to be exclusionary. It's meant to be a track record of they can handle large scale
scale.
production, getting the job done by a certain date. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that's not to say that the door is closed to that artist,
Sure, okay.
because we're also opening the opportunity for people to work in teams. So that's one of the reasons that we often have that opportunity with public art projects, is that it's a way that we can say, okay, if you don't have the past work examples, team up with somebody else who does, and learn how this process works, and then start to build that portfolio. But this is not a project where we would want somebody to be discovering the mural painting process for the first time.
Sure enough.
There's too many moving parts.
Yeah.
In this type of project, you don't open up to teams. Like, okay.
We do open up to
Oh, okay,
teams. Yes.
okay.
Yeah. So a team of people,
Sure,
whoever
sure.
we would request obviously a team lead.
And that presumably that team lead would have had mural work in their background,
Correct.
or someone in that team.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They would be leading the process, and then
Responsible for
and this is very common.
Okay.
This is a really common thing. This is mural painting is often a team sport. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent.
I didn't mean to get hung up on that, but just
No, the interpretation thing is fair. And it's good to know. And I think your contact info is listed on the initial submittable page too, if they have questions. So I'm glad to hear people use it. to reach out to you.
That's right. Yeah. People reach out all the time.
And it really would focus on the last sentence in that description. That's really what we're saying we want the mural to
The three
reflect.
words.
sure.
The upper is just kind of a description of the community, the elements that are here. The last sentence really encapsulates what we wanted to include. And so I think
Great.
that's,
Yeah, I like the 3 words a lot. And my last question, we had a similar sort of project description for when this building was initially painted? Was it really focused on water? Am I remembering right that
correct.
because
That
it
was
is
the
a
source of
water
the
building.
funding. It was kind of a water conservation
right.
activity. It was
Okay.
funded from the water fund. So that really was the focus on that one at that time.
I couldn't remember if we were going to have the same sort of not
this is a
restrictions,
little
but
freer.
focus. It'll be interesting to see what you get.
Can't see
Any,
the water.
oh, I like it. Any remaining questions for the Jackson and A mural RFQ? Excellent. Do we want this on full agenda?
It'd probably be good to have
think-
this as regular agenda
Yeah, I
just
think
because of
so.
nature and scale of the project and visibility. It'd be good to have the full council reading this.
Okay, yeah, I'm comfortable with regular agenda. So Megan, we'll see you at council one night soon.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much, Megan.
Yay.
Okie
But would
dokie.
recommend.
Oh, yes, recommend to approve. Yes. Item 10, professional service pre-qualification process master agreements approval with Scott. Hello, welcome.
So this is a update to our professional service roster that we do every 3 years, following state statutes on this. We put out a RFQ, well, an SOQ for qualifications from different design firms. Put it out there. Anybody can apply to be part of the roster. We put this one out with all the stipulations back in November. We got all the submittals in December. And then we had a group in the staff go through and evaluate everything to see who meets the minimum qualifications. We had 20 returned to us, and of that 20, 6 were from new firms and 14 were from firms that we've done business with in the past. And this process in general is, with creating this roster, it speeds things up for us. Instead of the typical process for anything that's over 50,000, you typically have to bring in RFQs every time you have a project. Then you have to evaluate from every firm that applies just for that project specific. This one's more for creating a roster that we can enter into a master agreement with everybody. It's not guaranteeing work to them, but when a project comes up and we can be able to select one of the firms, then we can start entering into task order agreements with them that are specific to that project.
So it sounds like the equivalent of like doing, say, background checks on a bunch of companies, but making sure that if we're going to see them for either urgent needs or smaller scale needs, because the 50,000 would still apply here, right?
So this is for above 50,000.
Above 50, okay.
Yeah, so any professional design, engineering, land surveying services over 50,000 requires you to have a qualifications-based selection process. So over a 3-year time period, we may have 60, 70 projects that we
Right.
could exceed that threshold. So rather than running 60 or 70 requests for qualifications,
Yeah.
we do it once, create a roster. Then as projects come up, then we can select from the roster, negotiate a task order, and just enter into an agreement with that firm. So it's just an efficiency of
been-
operations.
Seems like it's worked really well.
Yeah.
I love it. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this question. Was there anyone that you were, and this can be a sweeping generalization, was there anyone you were surprised to not see apply, or anyone that we had worked with previously that did not?
No, it is
Reapply.
pretty much all the expectations. There's a few in here we've never worked with either from our side or from the private development side, reviewing any of their stuff. So this range typically goes anywhere from Seattle to Spokane, Coeur d'Alene down to Boise. So
Yeah.
it's kind of more the Northwest. We didn't see any firms coming from, across the
Salt Lake or
nation or
whatever,
anything.
Yeah. State of choice today. Yeah. Excellent. It sounds like it is a useful tool in our state code and for the city to use. So,
Yep,
love it.
absolutely.
Any questions or concerns from the crew? Excellent. And do I hear that we recommend approval of this
Yeah.
roster as presented?
And consent, I would
Yes.
recommend also.
Consent agenda. Sounds good. Excellent. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Anything from staff or from anyone on the committee before we adjourn? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.